Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to episode 2 of Big Talk with Chris and Greg. Thank you for joining us. This is Chris.
This is Greg.
And we just want to say thank you to everybody for staying with us through that lengthy first episode. It was all good content, though.
Yeah, it was all good fun, man. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed what we did with it.
And, of course, we talked about our favorite debut albums, mostly rock albums, but talked about that and, you know, bands we liked and so on and so forth. But this week we're going to kind of change gears and we're going to talk about some wrestling. And in particular, we're going to talk about tag team wrestling, what we like, what we don't like, some of our favorites, some of our not favorites, and we'll see how this discussion goes, kind of an open forum kind of thing. And, you know, one thing we were talking about earlier today, we were just kind of shooting the shit. And one thing that I brought up that I thought was really important about tag teams was that when it's a tag team, that it's not just two guys that they throw together. It's actually a tag team, like the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, you know, the Rougeos, the British Bulldogs, the Midnight Rockers, what have you. What do you think about that? Do you think that's important, or do you see it differently than I do?
I think both of them work, and both of them don't work. There are wrestlers that you could throw together that just have some chemistry that just work. Either they are, you know, writing partners, or they worked together in the past, or they, you know, just started something new. So there's chemistry between wrestlers either way, whether it's a tag team together or two singles forced together to be a tag team, something like that. So as we start into this, I wanted to ask you, Chris, what brought you into wrestling as a kid?
I got into wrestling in the 80s, mostly first seeing the WWE because it was pretty much the one that was everywhere. I remember first seeing it. We had the Saturday Night Wrestling. Not before Saturday night's main event, they just had an hour on. And then, you know, later on, I started when I was going to my grandma's. Of course, we didn't have cable. We lived in the boomies. My grandma lived in the big city, which really was still the small city. They had cable, so we got to watch the Mid-Atlantic, the early WCW with the Horsemen, you know, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, Barry Windham, those kind of guys. So that's really when I got into it. And I liked it better because it seemed what I would call, quote, I'm quoting my air quotes right now, more realistic instead of the sports entertainment that the WWF was. There were times where you would watch it and you're like, oh my God, that's real. Where in WWE, you were kind of like, okay,
Yeah,
it's a little hokey.
Okay.
There was more character, and I don't mean characters like the person. I mean character like, why is this guy wearing this outfit? Why is this guy doing that? It was, whereas in the WCW seemed more realistic. Like it was just them, not a character. Like this is, oh my God, this is really that person.
Yeah. So for me, I started liking wrestling when I was young also. I think I saw some early parts of wrestling at my grandparents' house. Later on in life, I learned that my grandfather was also one of those that loved wrestling and would go to shows here in LA, like the Olympic Auditorium in downtown LA, and just had a really good time doing that. My dad was into it. He got me and my younger brother, who we still love it today, into that. So there was a lot of involvement in wrestling, and I think thanks to my grandfather, that, you know, instilled it a little bit in the family, maybe like a family line where he loved it, my dad loved it, we love it, and I'm hoping to stretch it out to the kids of, you know, hopefully they love it. But, you know, as it is, wrestling is still fun. I love it. I always call it my men's soap opera. So I enjoy it for the, say, dramatics of it, the heel, the face, the good guy, the bad guy. You know, the bad guy would win, the good guy would win. I don't always need the good guy to win because he would bring heat or bring excitement and make me want to turn into the next episode next week that kind of stuff. But that wrestling from a young lad, still today, I enjoy it, love it, want to see more of it.
Absolutely. And we live in a good area, LA. There's indies all over the place. We went to a show maybe about a month ago, whatever. We got some other shows coming up, and we'll kind of talk about those and maybe do a little report, let you guys kind of know what we think about what some of the indies are doing around. But let's turn our attention to what we really want to talk about, and that's tag teams. Like I'd said before, the thing I really like about the tag teams is when it's a team. I like that style of quick tagging, doing moves together, finishers together, working a body part together.
Yes.
I really think that really added depth to the story in a match, and also in the storyline where it was teams going at it. One of the biggest rivalries that I think you would agree that went on throughout their whole careers was the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express.
Yes, very much.
And I just think that the fact that those were two teams really lended a hand to how you got very invested in that story. You had your side. Of course, I was a Rock and Roll Express fan. I think you were as well. But of course, the Midnight Express was just as good as they were.
Heck yeah. That storyline, you could, if we went back and look at some of those shows of today, we would very much be into it, of saying, whatever rivalry they had, say in the 80s, and it would continue to 85 or, 89 or 90, or even if they still wrestle today, those tag teams, it would still be interesting and fun and exciting and, all that good.
And they were on opposite sides no matter where they were. I mean, we've seen them wrestle in Mid-South. They had a rivalry there. They went to WCW. They had a rivalry there. Anywhere, it almost seemed like wherever one of them showed up, the other one always showed up.
Correct.
And they were always, you knew it was, you were gonna sell tickets. You were gonna put butts in the seats.
It was a top draw.
They were
yeah.
Rock and Roll Midnight. If they were on the bill facing each other, you knew that you were gonna get a dynamite match.
Correct,
brother.
There you go.
And just you knew you were going to get a match because those teams work in that style that I really like, where I mean, you had the finisher where they were together. Yes, Midnight Express, they didn't always have that team finisher, but the way they worked in the ring and their psychology working together just was one of the best it's ever been.
Correct. On different things like that. Yeah, they would work together, whether, like you said, whether they're working the body part, whether they're working, an arm, a leg, the neck, that kind of stuff. Always tag teams learn how to do that stuff.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you thought that there were, I guess there's probably going to be some circumstances where I agree with you, where they will take two individuals, put them together, and it would work. And one of the things that I brought up when we were talking earlier before we went on air was in the Attitude Era of the WWE, what is called the WWE going forward, is they would take for a main event on Raw, a main event on whatever show was on.
Correct.
Let's put The Rock and Stone Cold against The Undertaker and Triple H. And I hated that because I felt like, one, I was getting robbed because I want to see two matches. I want to see, because it was either like one guy on one team had a rivalry with the other guy on the team had a rivalry with the other. Let's put them in a singles match. But that, I understood what they were doing by putting these teams together to get in a 2-for-1 kind of bang for your buck, but you didn't get that tag team magic.
Correct.
It always kind of, they went off in their own directions kind of thing. So that's what I really hated. But tell me some of the teams that you think where they took two guys, put them together, and it worked just as good as a tag team.
I'm going to bring one up. This is old school. Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. How about that one? That's a good one.
That is, that's going back quite a ways.
I had to dig
early 80s, yeah.
Correct. But two guys that were, known for their singles wrestling. They kind of threw them together. Do they have a name? I don't remember it, but, they have it. Same thing would be Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA. It wasn't Dusty TA. It wasn't Magnum Dusty. It's just two guys that were great wrestlers. I wouldn't can say they were friends, but maybe they were. But it just turned out they would wrestle, and I even think they won the tag team at one time.
I swear to God, I thought you were going to say Dusty and Nikita.
Dusty and Nikita, but to me, more that I liked was Nikita and Magnum, because they used to wrestle each other, and then all of a sudden, after their rivalry, they joined together to fight somebody else. Whether it was Sting, whether it was, the Road Warriors, somebody like that would come and be like, wham, bam. Oh, here we got Magnum and Nikita. Now weren't they fighting 2 weeks ago? Didn't they hate each other? Don't they hate each other? And wham, bam, they're doing it. That kind of stuff.
That was kind of in a time where the amount of real professional wrestlers was you had a smaller pool to kind of pull from. So you almost kind of had to do that out of necessity. But let's fast forward, late 90s, Attitude Era. Look at a team like the Rock and Sock Connection. At that time, two of the top 5
singles wrestlers
in the WWE. Let's put it together as a tag team. Did it make people want to watch the show? Yeah, but the wrestling, the match itself, do you think that was a smart move as far as just the wrestling itself, not the draw, the wrestling?
Wrestling itself, no. You're right on that one. Where wrestling, did they throw the greatest matches on there? Did they have a great finishing move? Nothing I can really remember or want to say or talk about, but those are two wrestlers that they threw together just to, say, hey, tonight on Monday Night Raw, we're doing, the Rock and Sock Connection, which they kind of added at the time.
Now, did that all come out of that whole segment where they did "This Is Your Life"? The Rock, did that come out of that, or was that later on? I don't really remember the timeline on that. Do you remember the?
I don't remember the timeline, but now that if you think about it, I would say probably after, because they wanted to bring a little more comedy into it or keep that bit going for a while.
So that might be a time where it didn't work out. We talked about some other things. Let's talk about some of our favorite tag teams. Why don't you go ahead and start some of your tag teams that you really thought were some of the best, that really worked the ring the best? Go ahead and give me some tag teams.
Definitely the Road Warriors. Love them. Road Warriors. The Steiner brothers.
Yes.
Were another good one. Of course, the Midnight Express. We talked about the Hart Foundation before. Good British Bulldogs. Some of the more of the newer tag teams, the Usos. I love them. And I like them both as face and heel. They work for me. I haven't really said, I don't like them when they're this guy. I don't like them when they're... I think they work on both. The Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys. Those three right there, those three just tag teams, loved. That was the funnest. I think we talk about tag teams. What do you love? I think me and Chris, one day we were talking about, give me your top 5 tag teams, and he knew what I was going to say of the Hardy Boys. It just won. And when the Hardy Boys first debuted, I didn't like them.
I didn't either. They came out in the fluorescent. Then weren't they wearing green plaid tights with the headbands tied, big sideburn? They looked like the Young Bucks before the Young Bucks were the Young Bucks.
Correct. Or they looked like a fake Rock and Roll Express.
Something like that. They were
something like that.
It looked a little, yeah. So I remember seeing them for the first time.
So when they first came out, I was Hardy Boys. Well, they wrestled, and then they started to come out with a gimmick and wrestle pretty good. I mean, there was like, oh wow, that was a good match. Oh wow, they're getting a feud with somebody else, and this is happening. So they kind of grew on me, and I think they grew a little too much because I'm all, saying Hardy Boys.
One of the things that I noticed about some of the tag teams you mentioned in particular, Hart Foundation. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you mentioned the British Bulldogs, but that's another team where they had that, and maybe even to an account, another team I'm going to throw at you was Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard.
Oh.
Went to WWE. They were the Brainbusters, but that kind of... was what it was.
Weren't they the brainbusters in WWE, and in when they were with WCW or the NWA, they were just Tully and
Yes. They didn't get paired
know?
up until they were both in the Four Horsemen because Arn was with Ole, Minnesota Wrecking Crew.
correct.
Remember, Ole left. They tag teamed up. One of the things that I liked about those teams I just mentioned was that the two wrestlers they weren't the same style. Whereas you go to like Road Warriors, they were brute force. Demolition, same.
Yeah.
They were the same guy. Awesome, yes. But you have Hart Foundation, Bret Hart, my favorite wrestler of all time, technical in the ring, and then you had Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who was just the Anvil. He came in and just killed you with strength. Was
Correct.
fast, but he had the strength. You go to the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, strength. Dynamite Kid was speed and technical.
Correct.
That rivalry worked so good because it was almost like the teams were wrestling each other, but they were actually wrestling themselves, kind of, because the teams were so
Correct. So
identical in skill. They were so good. Of course, at that time, we didn't know they all basically trained at the Heart Dungeon. They've known each other for years.
wrestling under different names when they first
Yes.
began or something.
So
Yeah.
I think that style, when you don't have two guys that are exactly the same, I think that lends to really making a good match and good. It allows the team to kind of do a lot of different things instead of just having to do the same thing over and over again. You have a technical guy that can work on the mat in the ring, and then you have the other guy that can come in and just do the brute force, the strength moves, the power moves. So depending on what tag team you're wrestling, you can kind of wrestle however you need to, depending on who you're wrestling.
So what would you say are some of your favorite tag teams? Little different than mine, or that you can say the same.
Heart Foundation.
Yeah.
One team that I really loved during the 90s that I still to this day, in my mind, best WCW Monday Night Wars tag team, Harlem Heat.
Oh man,
They
Booker
don't get the respect. They don't get what I think they deserve. If they didn't have the titles, they were going to win them next week. They just were so good, and they were both very big men. But you had, with Booker T, you had the quick.
Yeah.
Was he the greatest technical wrestler? No, but he had the agility, the high flying, the ability, the kicks, the spins. And then his brother was in there, brute strength.
Correct.
He was the big man who came in there and smash. I thought that team was maybe the best team that WCW had. I also liked the Steiners, like you had said. Road Warriors, Demolition was good. I also like some of the teams that move a little bit faster, like the Strike Force.
Oh, okay.
I like the Can-Am Connection.
Ooh.
Rock and Roll, Midnight.
Would you say you like the more of the high flyer tag team other than the brute force or the force of the wrestling?
I don't like the high flying for the sake of just high flying.
Okay.
So when it comes to, say, I already know kind of where you're going because I just know. Like, let's say the Hardy Boys. They did a lot of high flying, and to me at times it was too much.
Okay.
To me, it was just too much. Of course, when you get into a match like the TLC matches they had with Edge Christian, Dudley Boys, it was perfect for that kind of a match.
Okay.
But for a weekly wrestling match, I just thought that it was a little too much. I like the high flying in the ring. Not so much, swantons, flying out the ring, jumping out here, over here.
Second rope, top rope.
Second rope. Yeah. Is it a fun to watch? Is it amazing? Yes. Am I saying it's bad? No. I'm just saying I like a different style.
Got it. What would you say about tag team wrestling like the Freebirds, where it's not really, sometimes they may be a 3-man group, but they would switch off and they would, bring in switch off guys. So one guy would still work with this, another guy would do that. Very similar to maybe a a New Day of today, or the Von Erichs, when they were a tag team, because all those guys were brothers and stuff like that.
The Freebirds they were like an original. They just, at a time when, if you look at them, World Class Championship Wrestling, where their rivalry was with the Von Erichs.
Yeah,
that was a time, and you can go back on, it used to be on the network, and now it's on Peacock, and you can go look at some of those old territory wrestling. There was nobody like them. They could talk, they could wrestle, they could make you hate them, which usually was the case. Times they could make you love them. But no matter where they went, if the Freebirds were there, you were selling out.
Ooh.
Because you knew that they were going to put on a good show and a good match. As far as like them, the 3-man tag team thing, and it was interchangeable in and out, I'm not a big fan of that when people are holding titles.
True.
If you're holding a title, it's 2 people. It's not a group of 3. And then someone might say to me, well, they had the 6-man tag team. Well, I don't like the 6-man tag team. That's too many people. That's too many people in a match. I like just a regular ass tag team. If you want to do something else, that's why remember they had the World Tag Team and they had the U.S. Tag Team back in the 80s. And if you want to do another set of belts, do another set of belts, but there shouldn't be a 6-man tag team. I just thought that was too much. But like I've seen, like with the New Day when they had the titles, I don't want to see
different guys holding
Kofi and Big E, and then Kofi and Xavier.
Yeah.
No, because that's
not a tag team. That's not.
I don't want to sound like
people.
I don't want to sound like a sidelined parent, but it's not fair. Not fair to the wrestlers. It's not fair to the fans.
Correct.
Oh, I gotta go see the New Day wrestle. I hope it's Big E and Kofi, but then you get Kofi and Xavier, and you're like, Big E doesn't even wrestle. I want to know what I'm gonna get.
Right.
But the Freebirds, man, that rivalry they had with the Von Erichs was just something else. I don't know if you guys can go back and watch some of those old episodes of World Class Championship Wrestling in Dallas at the Sportatorium. You will see crowds going. I go back and when I watch some of those old wrestling, it's just mystifying. You watch it now, and you watch WWE or whatever promotion you're into, and there's a barrier between the crowd and the ring. There's a physical, steel padded barrier. Have you seen what they have? They have these little, like they'll take like a bucket, like a little 5 to 10 gallon bucket, stick a steel pole in it, fill it with concrete, and have those at like every 10 feet with a loop at the top and just string. Have you seen that, dude? It sounds like
I want to say I think in an independent I saw something like that. This is before, the hardcore wrestling of ECW and, of those days. But I did see something like that more than the barriers of today or the barriers of, yesteryear and stuff like that.
Now, when you're, I do this for myself because it's just I'm a weirdo. When you're watching a tag team wrestle, do you ever say to yourself, oh, that guy's going to go singles? That guy's got champion written all over him. Like in hindsight, you go back and you look at the Hart Foundation. I think to everybody it was obvious, but some of these tag teams, it wasn't so much obvious. Like you watched Edge and Christian, I don't think it was obvious. You watched the Hardy Boys, I don't think it was obvious. Even Dudley's when they went to TNA Impact, I don't think it was obvious. But, 3 of those guys, and in Edge, I would say maybe even just 5 of the 6 guys with Bubba Ray, or not Bubba Ray, but Devon being probably the one that didn't. They all really had successful single careers. Do you ever look at tag teams and look at it in that way, or you kind of just, I like these guys tag teaming, I don't look at it that way?
I want to say I agree with you in that point where at some point that these guys are going to turn on each other. It's kind of history, and it kind of repeats itself over and over. So however long they're a champ or however long they're a tag team, and once it's played its role, all right, you know it's going to turn. And so now I think the most craziest one was the Rockers. Once Shawn Michaels kicked Marty Jannetty, that's the one that plays over and over. And you turned on each other. You guys were so good together. But we all know Shawn Michaels was destined to be the great one, a great one, and high flyer, main eventer, Mr. WrestleMania, just something like that. Do they run their course? Yes. That's why I think sometimes you see these guys doing or wrestling, and like, okay, they're good. They're going to wrestle for, so long. And then all of a sudden, things change. The storyline changes. One guy gets hurt. Like, what if you're wrestling and all, shoot, so-and-so got hurt. My partner got hurt. Now we're going to add you to the storyline. You're going to be a single wrestler for a little bit, that kind of stuff.
Which did happen a lot. I remember specifically during the 80s that happened to the Road Warriors when Hawk got injured. They were supposed to be running a program with the Four Horsemen of some type, and that's when, Animal got injured, and then that's when Hawk, was it Starcade or one of the...
I thought it was War Games.
May have been where it was that's where he was the heavyweight match against Ric Flair. Of course, everybody knew he would not win that.
Okay.
And, so sometimes when it's an injury and things run their course in that kind of a way. But I always, not so much in the past, but after seeing it happen over and over again, whenever I watch a tag team, I kind of see like, okay, which one of these two is going to be the one that's going to go and be a singles wrestler? And we can go back and look at all these tag teams. Heart Foundation.
Yeah, the Killer
Bret
Bees, British Bulldogs, like you said, the Hardy Boys. Some of the new wrestling of today would be, the Undisputed Era, that type of stuff.
How do you feel about the importance of a tag team having a finisher that involves both wrestlers? Heart Attack, 3D.
Loved it. That was one thing. That's one, like you said, defines a tag team where they're working together to do the finisher to win the match.
What's your favorite tag team finisher of all time? Who and what?
If I have to tell you something on the top of my head, it would probably be the Heart Foundation, doing their finisher. I thought that was great. One of them.
Yeah, that definitely was. You knew it was over when they hit that. Doomsday Device by the Road Warriors was. I always thought that someone was going to break their neck and never get up again every time I saw them do that. And then you look at some teams where they didn't necessarily have that tag team finisher. Two that come to mind we already talked about was the Midnight Express. They did the pile driver where one guy would get on the second rope, grab the feet, push him down. The name of that type of pile driver escapes me right now. I can't think. And another one was the Steiners. They never really had like a tag team, we're doing this together finishing move. Sometimes you would get the Bulldog from Rick Steiner. Sometimes you'd get the Frankensteiner.
Oh.
Then you'd get the Steiner recliner. I don't know if he used that in tab, but it's like, did they ever really have like a move they did together? I don't ever recall them really having a move they did together.
I don't remember it at all. But there are some groups, like you're right, that when they worked together, had that magic, worked and it not. One of the newer wrestling groups of today, the tag team of today, would be MSK. They do have a finishing move where one of them does something and the other one flips over, and it works together, and that's more their finisher move.
I think that's totally important. Most of the time, 9 out of 10 times. Of course, we talked about some that tag teams really love that don't necessarily have that. But I think that's important because it just shows the continuity, you want that partnership, you want that teamwork, you want that it's over kind of a move instead of some singles guy doing a singles finisher on another guy. Yes, it's over, but it's a tag team match. And that's kind of also why I kind of didn't like the singles wrestlers, because I want to see two guys pull a move. It's over. They pulled it together on one guy. double drop kick. Kind of cheesy, but it worked. But it worked.
But it worked.
But it worked. Of course, if you don't know, the double drop kick was Rock and Roll Express, possibly the biggest tag team draw ever. They were they had the fans behind them 100% of the time. 100% of the time.
They've never turned heel, have they?
No.
You know, talking about the Rock and Roll Express, you know, those guys had a look and a style, right? Looking at this certain way, dressing a certain way, saying, "Ooh, yeah, rock and roll, we're doing this." Also, if you want to say, maybe the Rockers ripped it off a little bit, you know, so they have their own style and some of that, very similar to rock and roll. And like I said, going back to even the Young Bucks today, who talked about having that style and, you know, looking at it and, you know, with the fringe or the over the top gear that looked something together. So I want to say, you know, the Rock and Roll Express, from what they started, still has an effect on wrestlers today or even wrestling today.
I think the team you just brought up, Young Bucks, probably out of the tag teams, it's almost like everything they do, it's both of them. It seems like,
yes.
And every time I watch them wrestle, I say to myself, at least 3 or 4 times, wow, I've never seen that before. Oh my God, what was that? I have to rewind that and watch it again. Did they just do that? And they flaunt and they strut like they could be the best tag team wrestling right now. They just are innovating, taking it every time they're on to another level.
You know, they've also said that they don't want to be broken up and do single matches
I don't
together.
think that I see either of them
being a singles wrestler?
They're I don't want to pigeonhole them. I mean, I don't want to sound like a dick, but they're two small guys, and I think that they run off of each other so well. Their personalities, I think it might be difficult, not impossible, but difficult for them to be. They wouldn't be the same people they are, and they couldn't be the same wrestler that they are now if they split them up. And I think that would be career suicide to a point.
I think Nick got hurt. This was about maybe a year ago. He got hurt, and they had Matt by himself for a little bit. I don't think he wrestled singled, but he did have some matches where he, you know, was thrown in to help like a 3-man tag team or a 6-man tag and doing stuff like that. But you're right. The magic was still not there. He's still a great wrestler. He can wrestle, but the magic of the other 2 guys may know him, but it wasn't the magic of like him and his brother doing there and stuff like that. And then when he came back, the gates opened up. They kicked ass, took names, and won the belts.
It's almost like a blessing in disguise because you don't get to see them, and it's like, oh, we want to see them so bad, and so it's almost like a ta-da, we're back, and it's you don't know what you got till it's gone, Tom Kiefer, and you realize how great they are. Another point I wanted to touch on, we can talk about, is the art of tag teams that don't really seem to do this anymore. There are a couple that do it. And that is one thing that I thought that the Minnesota Wrecking Crew and Arn and Tully, and I also think, because he did this as a singles wrestler as well, was the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart. They were really good at taking away a body part. Yes. They were good at, okay, your finisher is a drop kick. We're taking away one of your legs, so you can't do it. Your finisher has to do with upper body strength. We're taking away one of your arms, and they would work it. They would work it. They would work it. The face team would come back and they'd try to do their finisher, and they couldn't because they were too hurt.
Correct.
I think that psychology of a match in the story that tells is just so good, and it's something that's really missing from wrestling, because everybody wants to see the high flying. Everybody wants to see the match that's 5-6 minutes long instead of the 10 to 12 minute match that I like to see, where it's a story and it's back and forth, and you think your guy's going to lose and he comes back, but then he can't because he's too hurt because they did this to him and did that. You know, I like that dynamic of the body part being taken away and working on it, and the two wrestlers basically cutting the ring in half. I mean, you always hear when a commentator starts talking about they cut the ring in half. I love that. I love the psychology of cutting the ring in half, quick tags, working on his arm, working on his shoulder, armbar, throwing it over the rope. Guy comes off, hits an elbow, you know, arm twist, tags his guy back in. He comes in and socks him in the face, and then he grabs our wrist lock, tags the guy in, and they're just doing it over and over again. It's, to me, that's what I love in a tag team.
Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with the Revival.
That was the one team that I was. They remind me a lot of Minnesota Wrecking Crew.
Correct.
They remind me a lot of.
So now they're in AEW and they are known as FTR. They definitely, and the ring announcers always talk about being that smash mouth type of wrestling. And I agree with them. It works. And you can definitely tell they work on one body part. They work on, like you said, the knee, the leg, the arm, the shoulder, whatever. Those guys know how to do a smash mouth type of wrestling on that today. So there are still groups still working or still tag teaming as a smash mouth wrestling group where they, work on those parts, which is great, man. I go, it's I don't want to say it's new and exciting, but it's when you have high flyers and everybody's good and doing kicks and doing jumps, these guys come and say, hey man, I mean, some of their things are no flips, just we're going to hit you in the mouth.
Yeah, mat wrestling.
Yeah, mat wrestling.
And technical mat wrestling can be boring at times, but not really.
Kurt Angle was known for that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And
one of the best.
Yeah.
You bring up his name and just, I don't want to get too off course, but God, whenever you hear about people talk about the great wrestlers, you never hear his name. And he wrestled with a broken frickin' neck, as he likes to say. He won a gold medal with a broken frickin' neck. I mean, gold champ or a gold medal in the Olympics, came to WWE, all the way to world. I don't understand why he's not mentioned in the same breath with some of the greats of all time.
Maybe we should start mentioning it, man. Let's just get on our soapbox and start yelling, Kurt Angle, and you suck.
Here, I'll throw some. This is nothing we've even talked about or anything. What do you think about the importance of, and this normally happened with a heel team. As a matter of fact, I can't really think of any, maybe one or two. The importance, whether or not you like or dislike, how you feel about tag teams coming with a manager. James Cornette, Slick, or like we were watching some Mid-South. You got General Akbar, coming out there with his tag teams.
Jimmy Hart.
Jimmy Hart. You always know that there was something gonna happen, and it almost adds that extra element of, and it seemed to always be with the heels.
Yeah.
I think the only manager I can really think of was like Captain Lou. Maybe coming out with a tag team at some point, but I really can't think of anybody that really was a manager. Sonny doesn't count. Elizabeth with the Mega Powers that don't count. Yeah. I'm talking about someone's going to get involved. Someone comment on our Instagram page, Big Talk CG, at Big Talk CG, if you can remember any manager that came out with the face team. But I can't remember any, and you always knew when, and we keep going back to these teams because they are, in my opinion, the greatest rivalry in tag team wrestling. The Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, Jimmy Cornette, you always knew he was going to get involved at some point.
Yes.
And that's why they always had those matches. Jim Cornette handcuffed to the ring, Jim Cornette in a cage, Jim Cornette barred from ringside, because you knew he was always going to get involved with his tennis racket. That extra layer, that extra element of the third person really lent to even the deck stacked more against your faces, the teams that you were pulling for.
Yes, that kind of. You're right. The managers always seem to get involved with more heels and either swiping the leg or hitting them with a foreign object, doing stuff like that. Yeah, that's always it's fun. Like you see it, but you kind of it's going to happen. If they don't do anything, it'd be like a big surprise. Like, well, he didn't do anything. He just stood there, looked pretty. I go, wow, that's
Maybe if they're wrestling a couple of jobbers or something, they're not. But
yeah, we're not talking about jobbers, man. This ain't a jobber show.
this is jobber-free zone. What about, we've talked about the big, mostly WCW, WWF, WWE, some of the tag teams when they were younger coming up through some of the territories. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about the third federation from the Monday nights. Let's talk about ECW.
Okay.
Whole nother animal. I'm sure some of our listeners, if you're interested in hearing this, know all about ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. They had some amazing tag teams. Obviously, their crowning jewel was the Dudleys.
Correct.
That some people regard as the best tag team to ever walk the face of the earth. What do you think about some of their tag teams, ECW? What do you think?
I loved it. If I have to bring ECW up, I'm going to bring up Rob Van Dam and Sabu. Oh, two different guys, but had a manager, Alfonso, but they had the chemistry together. If Sabu was wrestling singles, Alfonso was out there. And then they had Rob Van Dam came out and he had Alfonso out there. But when they worked together, there was definitely a lot of magic working from some of those. Some of my favorite from ECW, I'm going to break up, is Raven's Nest, Raven's Flock. Raven, Stevie Richards, Kidman, Kane, was part of that. Some of those other guys that had their great tag teams, the Impact Players, which was Lance Storm and Just Incredible. Those are great guys. The Eliminators, Perry Saturn and John Cronus. The Pit Bulls, Gary Wolf and Anthony Duante, I think is his name. Public Enemy was in there.
Public Enemy, that was... If you guys don't know this yet, I'm a weirdo. So I went through this thing where I got to watch... I'm going to put on ECW and I'm going to watch them all. I'm going to go to bed and watch them all. So watching ECW kind of from the beginning.
Okay.
Everything that they have on there. Public Enemy was like their first big tag team. And you could see them incrementally week to week get more and more and more and more violent and dastardly. It just kept minimally escalating. But if you looked at it from month to month, you'd be like, holy crap, this is getting that. In my opinion, having watched in such a short period of time as many episodes as I did, instead of stretching it out over years, that tag team really lent its hand of taking ECW from where it was to where it went. They really drove the violence, that extreme that they were looking for.
Yeah. Some of the other tag teams that I still loved from them was also, and this is not so popular, would be the Full-Blooded Italians. Those are one of them. And same thing.
The FBI.
And the other thing was Blue World Order.
The BW, the Blue Meanie.
The Blue Meanie.
Stevie Richards.
Stevie Cool.
Yes.
Supernova. I mean, that was, it was comedic, but it was also fun. Like when the Dudley Boys first came out, there was 5 of them. 5. Spike Dudley, Devon, Sign Guy Dudley. I think there was another guy. I think
Big Dick Dudley.
Big Dick Dudley. Yeah. So
did you say Spike?
I said Spike. I said Bubba, Devon, Sign Guy, Big Dick, and I think there was one more, maybe 5 or 6 guys.
Well, who was that guy? The quintessential stud muffin?
I don't remember his name.
He used to be like the ring announcer or commentator.
Yeah,
or
something like that. Yes.
Name.
Oh man, I forgot his name. Yes. Just guys like
he wore like a tuxedo jacket with just the tie, no shirt, and he looked like he was wearing a sweater underneath it, but it wasn't a sweater.
Oh, it was so hairy. But that was a lot of magic of ECW, man. That was a lot of good stuff, man. Yeah.
What about some of the novelty or matches, or you want to have certain stipulations in a match? Some of the most original ones that I remember, obviously cage matches, but Night of the Skywalkers, where you had Rock and Roll and Midnight, and then you had, I believe it was Midnight and the Road Warriors, and then you go on to like TLC matches and
You mean
stuff.
like a scaffold match?
Yeah, you remember the Night of the
those
Sky with scaffold matches and
Oh,
stuff like
those
that.
scaffold matches were
What do you think about that kind
out
of
of
stuff?
control. Because, you're thinking up there, I've been on a scissor lift before, right? And it goes all the way up, and then you look down and you're like, and they wrestled on this? They hit the mat or they did something. I go, man, this is...
So basically what this is, this is crazy, is they'd have the ring and they would have a scaffold going like over the top of it.
Correct.
A scaffold like you would see at a construction site along, above the sidewalk where the guys can work on the outside of the building. But that thing was above the floor, 20, 25 feet at least.
At least.
And it was probably about twice as wide as what you would see the construction workers working on. And to win the match, you had to throw the two other wrestlers off of the scaffold. Did anybody ever get thrown off? I don't think so. They always ended up underneath and letting go.
Swinging or doing anything?
Though, insanity. Now, fun fact. Remember when, I think it was Rock and Roll. Was it Rock and Roll or was it, I guess it doesn't matter. Midnight Express was wrestling because I think they did both of them. When James Cornette was hanging underneath the scaffold and Big Bubba was supposed to catch him. You got to go back and watch this. And the way he lands shattered both of his legs.
Oh.
When he landed straight down on the ring. You can see it happen. It's disgusting. Let's digress from that. Let's talk about TLC.
Oh.
Let's talk about TLC.
Tables, the ladders, and the chairs.
Listeners, if you have not seen the TLC matches, tables, ladders, chairs, probably... Did they do it twice or was it 3 times?
For the sake of argument, 3 times. 1 and 2.
You got to, if you're going to make a list of the best tag team matches of all time, those are all in your top, have to be in the top 10.
Yes.
Made careers.
Yes.
Those matches made their careers of the Hardy Boys, Edge Christian, and the Dudleys.
Correct.
3 of your favorite tag teams of all time.
Yeah. Because I love those matches. All those guys were in it. Young, good-looking, good wrestling. They were kind of like, I think they were before the main event or they were the opening match, and they set the bar.
Was that first one SummerSlam, or
it could have been a SummerSlam. But imagine following them after they come back and they're like, okay, hey, we just gave you the TLC match of the night. Beat that, Then these guys have to go. Oh, we gotta wrestle and beat those guys. That kind of stuff too. Yeah, TLC, definitely awesome. They even now have a pay-per-view on it because it's so much fun or so good or so exciting. We're gonna do it, and then now they really don't do TLC matches together all joined. It's the TLC event has one team would do ladders matches, one team is going to do tables, and one team is going to do chairs. But I still like TLC and one all in there jumping in.
Yeah, some of the greatest high spots you're ever going to see. The highlight, of course, is Edge's spear on Jeff Hardy.
I was going to say Jeff going on the top and doing the swanton and hitting Bubba, I think, or Edge or Edge and Bubba at the same time doing it. But, they had one, I think one had a good ladder and I think 2 had a bigger ladder. And that it was like, oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Amazing matches. I'm surprised nobody died. Really.
Or really got hurt or really injured themselves or something like that. Some of the other tag team wrestling matches of that was, when they do a 4 corners match, they're fun. Don't get me wrong. The Texas Tornado match or the strap match where,
the 4 corner matches that where you have the 4 teams, you don't necessarily have to tag in your partner, but as soon as one person gets eliminated, the whole team is gone. Correct?
Well, that was also one of them. The other one, what I was thinking was sometimes you have to touch the 4 corners of that. So you're wrestling over here and you hit one, bam, then you go with him again, and you hit another one, and then each guy have to hit 4 corners consistently. Bam, bam, bam. The other one did it. Okay, he has 3 of them. He has 1 more to go, and then the other guy would come. Okay, he gave you 2. That kind of stuff. And, Texas Tornado, bull rope matches. Those are always good. That type of stuff.
One more tag team I want to throw out to you. The Outsiders.
Oh, Hall.
Can't
and
talk
Nash.
about tag teams without talking about the Outsiders. 2 huge wrestlers from WWE that jumped ship, went to WCW, started the NWO, the Outsiders. How do you, where do you put them in the grand scheme of tag teams? Because they really, in my opinion, were 2 singles wrestlers. They didn't really have the move set together. How do you feel about how they worked as a tag team?
Oh, I love them because it was 2 big egos. It was 2 big guys. It was 2. You weren't going to get a fast match. You were going to get, a fun style with these 2 guys, and they were all attitude, and it was all show. And you weren't going to get we're going to jump from the top rope, or we're going to do this and do that. It was, hey, we're going to tag. We're going to do some moves. We're going to jump the crowd. We're going to do some elbows. We're going to get some jabs in and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was never a big fan of Big Sexy.
Because he had one move, the jackknife.
Yeah, he. Scott Hall definitely was the wrestler out of that tag team.
Okay.
Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, was definitely. He was definitely the wrestler of that tag team, and I think the fact that obviously the fact that the thing that made that team so popular was the NWO. What do you think? How do you think without that angle, if they just would have went over there as together as Outsiders, do you think it would have worked, not have worked, or what do you think?
To be honest, I think it worked at first because they didn't do NWO at first. It was the Outsiders, and then they started to, I guess, come up with a storyline and bring up the New World Order, where they're gonna be rebel against the corporation or the man, whatever, and they wanted to be outsiders. They wanted to be different. They wanted to do that. Yeah, there was with or if they did not come as the Outsiders, the storyline eventually went to NWO, and that's what worked. But NWO, they shot themselves in the foot when there was just too many guys. You having a faction? Great. You have a faction. I don't know where you stop at 4 or 5, but they went 25. They went 30. Half their roster was NWO.
Now, I always wonder, is it the fact that they wanted everybody or everybody wanted to be there? Because you kind of see the pull that, that they had with, management that was running, and eventually they became bookers, and eventually they became people that were really running the show, which is, I think what you're saying is that they shot themselves in the foot. They became too big. They tried to have their foot in too many places at once, and that's kind of was a detriment. They were only thinking about themselves, and they buried everyone else, a la Chris Jericho came on to become one of the biggest stars in the history of professional wrestling. I think that you're right when you they got too big. But do you think it was when they started to get? I mean, Jesus Christ, Scott Norton,
yeah,
those Virgil. What were they recruiting, or were those people saying
Scott Bagwell? Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think they got too big. People wanted to say, "Hey, we got this machine going on right now. We're working good. We're gonna get all these people into it." I think they even got crazy and they stopped. Now they had to break it into another faction where they pulled NWO, the Wolfpack, because
they had the Wolfpack.
It was too much.
What did they have? They had the black and white.
Yeah.
They had the black and red, and then they also have the Latin.
Oh,
they also had that with Conan. That was short lived, but they did have it. The NWO and had the red, the white, and the green.
Are you talking about the LWO, Latino World Order? No, I think that was very similar to what ECW with the BWO. They just kind of.
But Conan was in the NWO.
But Conan was in the red. He was red.
But it was still third faction.
I don't think
First argument, guys. First argument right here.
Okay, so let's switch it up and go to WWE and bring up DX.
Okay.
So you got DX, Shawn, Hunter, China, right? Faction right there. Tag team. And Rick Rude. Not Rick.
So you're talking about from the get-go. That was it from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like when they first started.
Correct. When they first started, that was them. They went off DX, blah, blah, blah. Was it Shawn got hurt? And they started DX, a different style of DX. So Hunter was still the main guy. They brought in X-Pac. They brought in Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and they ran with that. And that was within itself was great too. That blew up also. And then they stopped. You notice that they weren't adding similar to they weren't adding 5 or 6 guys, 8, 9, 10 guys. Then there wasn't 10 guys in DX.
Let's look at the best factions of all time. This is going to be another show, but let's just gloss over it quick to prove your point and you being right. DX at the most 5 or 6, 5 I think probably
guys.
Well, yeah,
5.
The 2 tag teams and China 5. Okay, 4 horsemen, 4 wrestlers, and James J. Dillon.
Yeah.
Evolution, 4 guys.
4
the
guys.
Shield, 3 guys.
New Day, 3 guys.
New Day, 3 guys. Freebirds, 3 guys.
3 guys.
I don't see anybody else that's getting over 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. So many that they have to do another brand, and I think that just proves your point that it was just got too big.
Correct. They just had to stop, and I'm glad they did stop and do that.
You bring up a team that we haven't even talked about, the New Age Outlaws. 2 wrestlers, and this kind of goes back to like you never know what you're gonna get. These were 2 low, mid card singles wrestlers. Billy Gunn obviously came from Smoking Guns, but the Road Dogg was the manager / handler roadie for Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
Yes.
So these were guys that not really sure how they got together. They were put together. They decided to be together. I don't think Vince McMahon's let you decide, so he probably put them together. It's one of those stories where it worked.
Yeah.
They were a dominant tag team, and then when they went to DX, they took their game to a whole nother level. Were they the best wrestlers that they had? No. But they told a great story. They were athletes. They could both talk the mic.
They had a hook.
Got 2 words for you.
Yeah.
And they had that crowd at times in the palm of their hand, and they could. That's why they had the titles. They were it. They were a draw. DX was a draw. They were definitely a team where 2 people, I don't know, they necessarily got thrown together, but they probably did. And sometimes you just got to look at each other and go, guess this is it. Let's make the best of it. And they did.
Yes. And they did. And they ran with it. They ran with it good into the ground, or not really into the ground, but ran until it ran its course. And once it ran a course, hey, maybe one of them got hurt. One of them got injured. One of them needed time off. Okay, what do you want to do now? Oh, let's start you off as a singles. So, yeah. And I think Road Dogg today is a producer, and Billy Gunn is in AEW with his sons now and have their own little gun club faction, which is great, man. Hey, you want to start off?
You like to see that family legacy go on, because especially the people that you see with the mothers and fathers and sons and daughters that you see that are carrying on or are having the kids and helping them carry on the legacy are quality wrestlers. You're seeing the Tully Blanchards with, his daughter is carrying on. You're seeing Billy Gunn with his sons. You're seeing good quality wrestlers doing it the right way, and it's nice to see that.
Definitely. These type of guys.
So, I think that's just about gonna do it for us. Do you have anything else you want to add or throw out there? Anything we're missing? Anything you want to tell me to my face?
Yeah. Wrestling today, there's a lot of good young tag teams that are really good. Some of them off the top of my head, I'm going to throw at you. Lucha Brothers. Amazing lucha style wrestling. Part today, part lucha style. Another one, Butcher and the Blade. Love them. Oh my God. Two guys have the look, have the chemistry that are working. Of course, the Young Bucks, Jurassic Express, aren't familiar. Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy. Look a little odd, but they work together, the things that are working. Santana and Ortiz, they were, in TNA, they were like the LAX, and then turned into Santana Ortiz. Great wrestling, and they're ones. And the quick story on that was, I never really thought LAX was anything like who these guys, blah 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 blah. And then I went to bar wrestling here in LA, and I saw them live, and I was like, after they wrestled, I was sold. I was like, man, these guys have it. I like it. I like the style. I like that they're working together and stuff like that. Some of the young guys or some of the other wrestlers in NXT or wrestling in general are the Viking Raiders, who came from Ring of Honor and went to, New Japan Wrestling. The work. For me, there's Imperium, grizzled young veterans. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Two guys from the UK working well together. Love that stuff. The Way, which is Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. They look a little odd, but they're working as a tag team and stuff like that. There's a lot of good tag teams of today that you can tell have influence of the past, from what we liked in the 70s, the 80s, 90s, and even of today. So there's a lot of good stuff out there for tag team wrestling.
I think
one of our favorite tag team, and they're not really known, but they're known for us, PP Ray.
that is exactly the tag team I was just about to interrupt you for, PP Ray. A lot of people are not going to know who they are. As a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if anybody listening to us does. Yeah. But
Ray Rosas, Pretty Peter Avalon, we both have met him. We both have took pictures with him. We both have expressed how much we enjoy their wrestling and their wrestling together. A lot of fun, a lot of excitement, and man, can't wait for them to come back together and see them tag team wrestle one more time. It's kind of like a reunion. You just want the reunion show. Yeah. Want the reunion match, just to see these guys and yell at them and smile and clap and raise your drink to them and stuff like that.
PP Ray,
all day.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us for this episode 2. Tell us what you think about our episode. If you have anything you want to add to the conversation, or anything you think that we're idiots about, or you think that you want to add, or give us your favorites, or let us know. Go ahead and visit our Instagram page. It's at BigTalkCG, or you can email us bigtalkcg@gmail.com. We will personally.
We don't have an assistant? No assistant yet?
Assistant's on vacation. Permanent vacation. Right. Maybe I can put the 12-year-old to work.
No, there you go.
And we will definitely look at every email, look at every post, and definitely would love to hear every one of your feedback, comments, on what you think of our show. And we're going to come back on our next episode. I don't know. Do we have a topic set for our next episode? Or we kind of...
I'm going to surprise you.
Oh, you're going to surprise me.
I'm going to pull something out of my hat. I'm going to pull something out of my wrestling trunks.
I hope you're going to pull it out of your hat and not somewhere else. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. Episode 2, Big Talk with Chris and Greg.
See ya.
See you later.